and welcome to Close Up with the Hollywood Reporter producers. I am your host, Tatiana Siegel, and I'd like to thank all of our guests for being here. So why don't each of you just give your name and the film that you'll be discussing today?
I'm Eric Roth. I'm a producer of Mank, along with Sion Chafin and Doug Urbanski.
I'm Marc Platt. I'm one of the producers of Aaron Sorkin's The Trial of Chicago 7, along with my colleague producer Stuart Besser, Matt Jackson, and Tyler Thompson.
I'm Ashley Levinson. I'm one of the producers of Pieces of Woman and Malcolm and Marie.
I'm Charles King. I'm one of the producers on Judas and the Black Messiah, alongside Ryan Coogler and Shaka King.
I'm Dede Gardner. I'm one of the producers of Minari, alongside my brilliant colleague Christina O and longtime partner Jeremy Kleiner.
I'm Andy Samberg. I'm one of the producers on Palm Springs.
Let's get started. 2020 was a year of seismic changes in the film industry. What wound up being your biggest pivot? And maybe let's start with Dede.
No. What do you mean? You mean just being home? I haven't gotten on a plane in 10 months. I've made 9,000 quesadillas. I just being home with the kids, honestly.
Anyone else want to take this? I'm especially interested in hearing Charles and Eric on this one because of the big news out of HBO Max.
It was a major disappointment, particularly the way it was presented. I think hopefully it'll rectify itself, but it's a much longer conversation. I mean, I'm also an advocate of streaming in many, many ways because of the opportunity for many, many people to see things that they wouldn't have seen. And on the other hand, I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant and went to the Brooklyn Paramount Theater, and at 8 years old was enveloped in the theater experience. So I think it's a complicated thing. But I'll just say, I think I feel somewhat as somebody who's caused this in a sense, or maybe it's for the good and maybe for not, is since we began House of Cards, so I produced that with David Fincher, and so it started a whole revolution. And I don't know if it's, I'm an older man, so it's a different experience,
I would say I started Chicago 7 to be distributed. We shot it in 2019, and it was intended for a theatrical exhibition. One of our goals in making that film was to actually get it out before the election, because it sort of resonated to us, to Aaron Sorkin and myself, and that was a goal. So in some ways, the acceleration of the business to a streaming business was actually a gift in certain ways for that particular film, and our ability to get it out this past October through Netflix, as opposed to the theatrical market that was not existent at the time.
Right, and in your case, Paramount, was it sort of full transparency when you were working with them to bring it to Netflix?
Well, the picture was structured as a negative pickup. So in the making of the movie, which was a year ago, October, November, December, there was no pandemic. And although streaming was a thing, it hasn't accelerated the way the business instantly changed in the last 6 months, where the future became the present in the moment. So it wasn't really until the picture was completed, even in post in July, with that we actually asked Paramount if we could look around, and then they were, of course, happy to do so, because they also recognized that there was no theatrical world really because of the pandemic at the time. And so it was, when it was done, it was with full transparency, and I think everyone was actually happy the way that it went down.
I would also just add that for Judas and the Black Messiah, same thing. We packaged the movie with our partners at Proximity, Ryan Coogler, who brought the film to us, and we committed to co-financing, half of the budget of the film, and went out to the marketplace. And Warner's, in particular, really responded to the film, and they became our co-financing and distribution partner. And there was definitely a conversation before we went into production about, could this be an HBO Max play? But we really had committed to our filmmaker, Shaka King, as well as Ryan, that we wanted this movie to be seen to as wide of an audience as possible. And so we continued down the theatrical journey on it. And similar to Eric, we learned about the new distribution decision that was made by Warner Media in the press, just like everyone else, because all 17 films were announced at once. We understand from a larger perspective, obviously, the challenge around theatrically released content at this time, but we were disappointed in how it was communicated. I would say that in terms of the shift that we've seen, we've all had to evolve, and we absolutely on the 13th of March went to working virtually like everyone else in our industry until a few of our productions ramped back up. And we have one now we're shooting where we're having all the COVID measures and being really careful and taking all the steps with the zones and sequestering people and doing those things. But we've also always believed in both the streaming world and where we're headed and going to a streaming marketplace, while at the same time believing that there are eventized movies and movies that can be shared and will continue to be shared theatrically. And so we're a proponent of both and really deciding with our projects which one is the best avenue for each specific project.
Can I just say on behalf of Mank, because I wasn't talking about Mank specifically before, that Mank was a Netflix kind of a gift from Netflix, to be honest with you, to give David the money and the opportunity and the support to make this movie. It's an unusual, special movie, and so Netflix has been wonderful. So but it was always intended to be Netflix and some limited theatrical release. So anyway, I think Mank is. I think it's been good for Mank. And it'll be in the future good for certain types of movies, obviously. But as I said, it's a lot of discussion. But for Mank, it's been great.
How about Ashley or Andy? Any particular challenging pivots for either of you this year?
I think I felt an enormous responsibility to try to create as many opportunities as possible because, we have our Euphoria crew and they weren't working. And so for us, it was just, how can we mobilize? How can we do so safely? So specifically for Malcolm and Marie, which we shot during the pandemic, we shot the end of June into early July. We started rethinking everything. How do we structure back end? How do we give our key grip, our focus puller, our production designer an opportunity to make some money and success? And so we feel really grateful for how it came together because it could have gone either way. But really the impetus of taking that journey was that we could do so safely and that we could take all of our learnings and share them with our community so that people could get back to work.
For us, my main thing this year was Palm Springs because nothing else could shoot. And for us, in some strange way, it was actually beneficial for us, the pivot that we were forced to take. Obviously, we were really excited for it to have a theatrical release, and that was a big part of the deal we made at Sundance. That's why we did a sort of co-deal with Neon and Hulu together, so that Neon can handle the theatrical. But because we came out in the summer, kind of right at in the first few months of it, I think we had a much more captive audience. It wasn't the way we wanted people necessarily to be seeing it, but we also knew that it was going to be on Hulu at the point anyway. I don't know, it was tough. After seeing it play in a theater at Sundance and feeling that reaction, especially the way the comedy played and how exciting and crackly that can feel, it was disappointing. But because it was in the summer when all these blockbusters were supposed to come out and didn't, all of a sudden it got a lot more attention. So it was a big pivot to make, but I think there were pluses and minuses.
Okay, how about, why did each of you choose to explore your respective subjects?
I'll speak up because I have a big mouth. David Fincher asked me to come aboard. He had his father, and it's a really unique situation where his dad wrote this, who's passed away a number of years ago, who wrote this a number of years ago, and David had encouraged his dad to write it. His name's Jack Fincher, and he was a journalist for Life magazine, and took a shot at this it's a subject matter that interested him about this kind of in an odd way, hopeful kind of story about this very complicated man who hadn't really found value in his life, and ended up writing Citizen Kane. And David and he tried to get it going, and over a number of years, and it just didn't find a home for it. And then David continued with his career, just quite good, I think. And he came to me saying, this is like 2 or 3 years ago. Could we try to do this together, and make the best movie out of this? And I think part of it was just because I'm primarily a screenwriter, and I know what it is like to be a screenwriter. So that's what the subject matter is. And there's certain political things in it that interested both of us, and obviously about where Hollywood was. And so that's how I was brought into it. But I must say the motivating force is David. I mean, in other words, there's no doubt about it. And he's a national treasure to me, and I think to everybody who recognizes artfulness. And so that movie got made because of David, and then I lent what I could to be a voice and an ear for him. So that's how Mank came about, but it was certainly through David's devotion to it.
Well, I can jump in. I similarly, Aaron Sorkin actually wrote Trial of Chicago 7 in 2007. And it was really, it really took a village of people for many years to figure out that film. It was instigated by Laurie McDonald and Walter Parks and Steven Spielberg. And as happens, it's a script that is a small period drama. So it sort of fell through the cracks for many, many years. And about 2 years ago, Aaron called me, somebody I knew very well, but had not yet produced and was interested in doing so, and said, would you produce this? And he and Stephen called me. And I'm old enough to actually remember the 1968 Chicago National Convention. I remember watching it on television. I remember Walter Cronkite looking into the camera and saying there's an armed camp outside. I remember watching the riots and the subsequent trial. And this was 2018, and it was before the pandemic. But in an eerie kind of prescient kind of way, the pandemic became what I guess the Vietnam War was in that time, and the issue of police brutality and the issue of cultural and political revolution were all subjects and ideas that were interesting to me. I was raised in a very liberal family, and as a young kid, I grew up in Baltimore, which was actually a very southern city, even though it's not in the South, and marched with my mom and dad for many causes. So the material spoke to me, as did the great writer, great voice that Aaron Sorkin is, and the marriage of what he writes to what he shot, particularly in this instance, speaks for itself. And it was an arduous journey putting it together because period drama, and it stopped and started many times until eventually it was independently financed with an investment from Paramount. But it was Aaron Sorkin and the subject that then, after this summer, both from the pandemic, but most importantly, the Black Lives Matter movement and the issues we have in this country with police brutality and the relationship between police and certain communities, particularly the Black community, and the way that our government, particularly parts of our government, can purge and diminish and try and quiet voices, and also the nature of the left and revolution and the messiness that all is. All of that was in the movie, so it certainly spoke to me, and as did Aaron Sorkin. That's how that came about.
I'll jump in next. So there were several things as well for us. First off, we were approached to go on the journey with telling the story of Judas and the Black Messiah by Ryan Coogler, who I had a long relationship and friendship with and worked with during my prior life in the agency world before launching Macro and starting down the journey of producing and financing movies. And he approached us 3 weeks after the success of the global and phenomenal success of Black Panther and said that he wanted to build his production company, Proximity, and the first project he wanted to get involved in was telling this story about Fred Hampton that Shaka King and Will Burson had this really beautiful script for. And Ryan, Shaka, and I, not only being three parties who work primarily in our industry as producers and filmmakers and directors, but are also activists and are very involved in human rights organizations, and one in particular that we were really involved in that highlights some of the issues that Marc was just talking about around police brutality and the disparity in issues that we've seen in our communities. And for Ryan, Shaka, myself as African-American men, it's an existence and a reality we've lived our entire lives. So for our company to work alongside Ryan Coogler as producers and financiers, but also Shaka King, who's a brilliant filmmaker, who we knew had a really, strong and unique perspective on how to tell the story about this hero, Fred Hampton, and frankly, the steps that our government took to quell the revolution, as well as to prevent the galvanizing of a rainbow coalition of bringing all these communities together. So to be able to play a part in bringing that story to the public for the masses on a domestic and global level to see it, the combination of doing that alongside of, such a prolific artist as Ryan Coogler, who was beginning his journey as a producer, and Shaka King, it was a, all the way compelling reason for us to get involved. And it was been, an amazing journey and partnership and village to tell the story.
Ashley, I think you're the only one on here with two films that we're talking about. So maybe go next, please.
Okay, great. I'll start with Malcolm and Marie, because we actually reversed engineered into that. So we wanted to see how could we shoot, and we were advised by doctors, and we knew we wanted one location, we'd have two actors. So Sam was like, what can I write that can hold the suspense of everyone, given that we have these limitations? And he was like, I know a terrible thing that someone can do to another person. And he said, what if Malcolm forgets to thank Marie at the premiere of his film? And then he and I just looked at each other and started laughing, because he had done it a few years earlier to me. And I remember during the premiere, I was like, oh, it's okay, it's fine. And then we went to the after party and it started to weigh on me. And then the car ride home, I remember saying to him, maybe next time you can remember me. And then there was, it had been 2 years since we'd even talked about it, but in his head, he'd had 100 conversations with me about it, about the weight of it, about acknowledgement of partnership. And I think during the pandemic, we're learning about our partners in a new way and about ourselves. And so this idea of what you unpack, who you think, who you acknowledge, how you support them, respect them, and allow them to grow was something that I think was on a lot of our minds. And so it was close to my heart, and Zendaya and John David and Sam and Kevin and I just started to think about how could we do this and tell this story. And then for Pieces of a Woman, I had been a very big fan of Cornell and Kata. I love White God. And I find him to be such an incredible cinematic filmmaker. And it was an experience the two of them had, the loss of a child. It just really deeply moved me. And I knew that it would be carried by one single person. And Vanessa Kirby, I'd been a massive fan of from The Crown. And I had a general meeting with her. And when 10 minutes before she and I were meeting, I got a text from Sam that said, you're absolutely going to love her. And I sat across from her and she said, I'm looking for a movie, something like Under the Influence, and A Woman Under the Influence. And I was like, she's Martha. And I text Sam under the table and I said, she's Martha. And he said, I've been thinking the same thing for 2 hours. And I just, I felt very grateful to be part of the journey. It's the first film I've produced.
How about you, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, with Palm Springs, it's sort of a slightly different approach, because I was asked to be in it as well as to produce it. And, our company is still fairly young producing, but we have done a couple of movies. So we're always looking for something that is funny, usually first. But with Palm Springs, it was actually exciting to me because it's sort of presented as something that we would be more known for in a comedy sense. But then there's this wonderful underbelly to it when you peel back the facade that is actually dealing in some more serious and, you know, existential themes and questions. And I think similarly to what you were saying about the two people stuck together, you know, the quarantine thing, what we're all going through, one of the reasons Palm Springs, we've been told, is landing with people is it really, the mechanism of a time loop and sort of marrying that with existential dread and a rom-com. It's sort of what a lot of people are going with. Like, what if you can't get away from yourself and from the people you've chosen to spend your life with, and you can't look to those distractions that you use to sort of hold them at bay, what is really there? And, you know, do you let yourself off the hook for mistakes you've made in the past enough to love yourself and therefore let love into your life? And, you know, are people who have made mistakes they feel like they can never come back from actually a lost cause, or can they be, you know, saved and brought back to some sense of normalcy and happiness, which we obviously think, yes, they can. So it was exciting for us to make the movie in that regard. And it was just nice to know that there were moments in it where we were going to get laughs and also a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, and who would have thought 1 year ago when we were sitting in a theater in Sundance watching the movie that this was about to be our reality, with like every morning waking up kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Speaking of Sundance, Dede, Minari also premiered at Sundance 1 year ago, almost 1 year ago. Tell me about why you decided to explore that particular subject.
I think, you know, we've always been really interested in championing and protecting voices inside of the system. We became friends with Stephen Young when we made Okja. And then he was sent this script, and he then sent it to my colleague, Christina Oh, who gave it to me and Jeremy. And I think we saw an opportunity to tell a universal story through highly specific characters and setting. That's what we were interested in trying to do. Sundance seems a long time ago.
Okay, I'm going to do a finish this sentence. Finish this sentence. There are too many films about.
This is where I'm envious I'm not Eric, and it just comes like that.
No, this would take me a year and 2 rewrites. Wow.
This is a trick question. We love movies. There can never be enough films.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm not sure there's too many.
I can answer it. Too many films about bachelor parties. It can't, like, I thought of that right away as soon as I was formulating the question.
I have nothing. Sometimes it's tough, you know, to just summarize things in one word.
All right. Well, then how about if no one wants to tackle that, there are not enough films about ...
I think, I mean, I guess why I'm stumped here a little bit is I think there's such a wide variety of films about everything. And obviously the things that have themes like Charles were talking about, what Marc were talking about, and I know Dede's movie, and I've seen Ashley's movies, and Andy, the idea that there's more to things, you know, and also obviously we're in a time where we can start talking about so many issues, and obviously diversity, everything that under the sun. So that I think every point of view should be expressed, and that that people will find what matters, you know. And I think that's why I keep doing what I'm doing, to try to somehow enhance when I pass from this, and my days are kind of numbered, that my legacy is I've done things that really kind of had some value. That's what I think, as I said, we're trying to do with Mank, I think, a little bit, and that it had an underbelly about socialism and versus free enterprise and everything else. And I mean, I think it's one of the great things that's happened in the industry that has blossomed with all these with every single kind of voice that can speak up and articulate what they have to say in so many beautiful ways. So I don't think there's one, I guess for me, there's not one answer to either of those questions.
I would chime in and say, I think we've seen a lot of great progress, and as represented by the beautiful films that all of these incredible producers have made here. And I think this is a unique moment here with, you think about how many complex, dramatic stories and with very diverse cast in many of them. I could say that I think that there's been a long history of our industry where there weren't as many of those stories being told, and there are great producers, Plan B and others, who've been a huge part of changing that. So I think that there's room for so much more. So I would say we're beginning to scratch the surface and see some change, but I think there's room for a lot more, for really specific, beautiful, culturally specific yet universal stories, like Minari and like Judas and like Your Beautiful Love Story, and the ones we've all been a part of. So that's what I would say.
So it's kind of a, there are not enough films like this.
Yes.
If you could switch jobs with anyone for a day, who would it be?
I'll go. I would have loved to have been Dede on the set of Moonlight.
You don't need to be me.
That's funny.
It's true.
I think I'm sounding a little pretentious here, but I guess in the long run, if I could have done something maybe to do something a little more important in life. I mean, I think this is important and it had tremendous success. But I don't know, the person I live with is a tremendous doctor, and I could see what she does really for benefit of society. That and I love to make people laugh and cry and all that. And it feels good, but I guess in a more noble way, I guess, but I don't know. I don't have that in me. So I didn't do it, you know. I remember when I started, I always felt like I wanted to have that book, that flyleaf in a book jacket that listed all these professions, you know, from taxi cab driver to salmon fisherman, you know, like Jack London or something. And I don't think I'm that person. So it's not that I'm disappointed about it, but that just wasn't, but that's a nice thing. You can, as a producer, I think everybody has an opportunity to go live other lives that they don't live, and you know, enhance people's world in a way, and hopefully deal with subject matters that matter, or at least make them happy. And so I think that's a great blessing. So I guess, I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm just saying it.
Anyone else want to jump in with a dream job switch?
There's a long list of people doing more important stuff. So.
Does anyone have a dream project that they would be willing to share? Whenever you ask this question, people always are like, I just can't tell you about it yet, but it's going to be amazing. But, you know, what hasn't been done yet that you all would love to do?
I'll just say on the top of my head, and I'll jump in and I'll shut up. I hope this is about to happen. This movie I wrote for Marty Scorsese called Killers of the Flower Moon, which is incredible story of the Osage tribe and what happened to them in 1821. And it's, I think, what will be one of the first, or maybe the first real portrayal of how we've treated Native Americans. And but also it's a story about it's a Western, a generation. Anyway, it's really something important to me, and I hope that it seems like it will get done. So that would be, I'd say, a dream project for me.
That sounds beautiful, Eric. I mean, if you think about how few stories we've seen from the perspective of the indigenous and Native American community, that's beautiful. And so many of those stories have been told not from their perspective. I would say for me, it would probably be something along those lines. You think about, you know, large scale films. You think about the global success of a movie like Black Panther. So to be able to have a Braveheart epic level movie about you know, an African warrior or hero. It's one of those stories in history that haven't been told, because there have been numerous ones through history. Something on a large epic Game of Thrones level, I think would be great to champion and tell some stories at that level at some point in time. And I think there'd be a large audience for it.
Anyone else?
Palm Springs 2.
He's there. He's there.
Done.
All right, deal.
Like remake The Last Starfighter, something like that.
It wouldn't be an Oscar season without a little bit of controversy. And there was some, I guess, outrage that Minari can't compete for Best Film at the Golden Globes. So Dede, what are your thoughts on the Globes' rule that prevents a film like Minari from being considered in that category, the top category?
Well, they've decided that their rule is determined by language and percentage of language. And I don't, it's their rules. It's their rule to make, and it's their rule to change should they decide to. We just followed the rules. And because we are over, I think 60%, we had to submit it for foreign. That was really the only choice we had.
Right, and Parasite was in the same situation last year, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a profoundly American film. So, what can you do? The rule and the thing didn't merge in this case. But, I appreciate the conversation that came out of it, actually. That was interesting, and I was grateful for it. And I think it prompted people to think, oh, wait, is that how we should do this? What do we really mean? And why do we, so we'll see. We're just following the rules.
Until the rules change. Ashley, you had to contend with your piece's male lead, Shia LaBeouf, being embroiled in controversy. What kind of conversations did you have with the film team and Netflix about how to handle moving forward?
I was deeply saddened, personally. And I was grateful to Netflix because the story was always about a woman who was going through a tragic event. And then Ellen burst in, and the relationship between Vanessa and Ellen was really, for me, the heart of the story. It was about how do you overcome grief and the expectations put on you from one generation to the next. So our materials didn't change that much. It's just, I don't know how much more I can contribute other than it's really hard on you personally, on your film. And it's upsetting.
What has gotten you all through these challenging times?
I would say first and foremost, my family. And, it was a great time to just get that much closer to our family, and really, especially through the tragedy that so many people and so much loss on such a global level, to appreciate my family every single day. And then I would probably say right there alongside it would be my faith. Those are probably the two things that have got me through it the most.
How about you, Andy? What's keeping you sane?
Very similar. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and the year leading up to this was an incredibly busy one for me with work. And obviously there's a lot of horrible stuff happening in the world, but personally, this year has been revelatory for me in a lot of ways, and how close I've been able to get with her and the time I can actually really spend with her. And as a father, to see in real time how much of a difference it makes to be with her as much as possible. The connection that I have with her is so much different because of it. So I'm very grateful for that, and it's definitely helped me get through.
For me, there's a great existential quality about it. I have a big family, lots of children, lots of grandchildren, and at 75, I really it hit me not harder than anybody else, but hit me personally harder in a way, feeling like a year's been gone, And when you're 48, I'm sure it means something, but that. As I say, days being numbered at my age, that everything obviously counts, and not being able to hug people and all those things, and yet watching, but feeling, I don't know if fate is the right answer for me, but there is some sort of blessing that I have being able to be living in a, you know, in a neighborhood that's safe and all that stuff that everybody else doesn't have, and where they have to worry about things of, and everybody's put a bubble around me trying. I have a lot of complicating health stuff, so that I'd probably be a goner, you know. So they've kept me safe so far, but it's been really it affects me in different ways, you know. Some days I'm very I'm not particularly manic depressive, but I get up feeling despondent, and other days it's a great joy. And I think it's also about solitude and feeling where we are in our place, and we should all go watch the television show alone, and you'll understand what's going on.
I have a 4.5-year-old who's brought me great joy, and I think, like Eric was saying, and Charles, it's you have an immense amount of gratitude, and I think we work as hard as we can to try to make a difference, but ultimately, a lot of that goes away at bedtime and reading a book with my 4-year-old, and it's a good reset for me, and I'm incredibly grateful for that.
And Dede, I know you already talked about all the cooking you've done, and I'm not sure if that was comforting or just sort of a.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, I'm mad crazy for my kids. And the good news is I'm even crazier about them now. But I also think it's very health making or health giving to live in a prolonged state in which you every single day think, oh my God, I'm so fortunate. I think it's
Yeah.
I think it's important. I think it's important. I think there's something in that, you know.
Okay.
I would echo that really what everybody said. It's family, faith. I have my children and grandchildren number 15. There's 15 of us. I would never have had the time with them, and many of my children are grown, to spend with them. Like Dede said, I haven't gotten on, I mean, I did get on a plane because I've had a couple of movie shooting, but for many months I didn't. And the time spent with them, and unexpectedly and in different ways, it was profound. And just, you know, my kids are privileged kids, and they're wonderful people and activists, and just the way you'd all want them to be, and young grandchildren. And they all had their disappointments, whether it was, you know, things stolen from them, losses that they can never have, you know, from their perspective back when you lose it. And just by way of example, so my middle daughter, who's 30, she's just a girl who dreamed her whole life of what her wedding would be, and found the right guy, and the wedding was supposed to be in May, then it was postponed to June. It could never happen. And then we found a way, because we were fortunate with doctors advising to create a bubble to have a wedding. And 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and 5 days before it, one of my kids got COVID, and it went through 9 of the 15 of us, which was terrifying, including young grandchildren.
Wow.
And the perspective you get, like you all said, in an instant is overwhelming. And so last week, my daughter got married in my backyard with her siblings and my son-in-law's siblings. That's it, an in-law. So there might have been 12 of us, not the little kids. That's it. And it was stripped down to its essence, which is how we've all lived our lives the last 10 months, stripped down to its essence. The profundity of it was overwhelming and memorable. And it was not the wedding she ever wanted. It was exactly the wedding she dreamed about in many ways. And for that, you know, it was just an encapsulation of what you've all said. Perspective we've gained, and the essence of what our lives are, and the gratitude we have for what we all have. So hopefully, you know, by the end of this year, we'll be out the other end, and we can see each other in person, celebrate our work, and continue good work we all try and do.
All right, last one. Is there one actor or actress that you haven't worked with yet that you're dying to work with?
Well, I had heard that Rhoda Blank didn't want to act again, so I'm going to say her because I think she's brilliant and a truly unique voice. But the list is long. I'm very grateful to be among this group, and there's a long list.
Dede?
I mean, once again, very long list. For my teenager, I'm going to say Andy.
Nice.
That would be so heroic. Michaela Cole is, I'm just think is, on a whole other level.
I said I wished over all the many years where I've worked with an incredible array of actors that I'd worked with Meryl Streep.
It's a hard one. There's so many great actors out there. I would say maybe Jonathan Majors, who was actually supposed to be in Chicago 7, and the dates didn't work out, and is spectacular young actor doing great, wonderful work, whose career I'm going to follow, and hope I find something to work with him on.
How about you, Charles?
There's so many great actors that we would love to work with. We've been blessed to work with some incredible people so far. I love some of the names of people that were, both Jonathan and Michaela Cole. I was blown away by her show. I would say I've gotten to meet Donald Glover. We haven't had a chance to work with him yet, so it'd be amazing to do something with him. And Lupita, I'm a huge fan of hers, and we've haven't been blessed to find something to do with her yet, and that would be amazing if we could.
Well, it has been a pleasure having you all here to discuss your films and the industry at large.
Thank you all for participating. For The Hollywood Reporter, I'm Tatiana Siegel.